brain, you're in the nerds domain. Come on in, it's about to begin. No need.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Nerds Domain podcast. This week, we have an interview with Jeremy Crawford of Wizards of the Coast, one of the lead designers for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. It's not just me this time. It's going to be me and two other people from a podcast and one guy from a website, all talking to Jeremy about what's going on with D&D, and just to get a feel for what their plan is and what they're trying to do. I would say please excuse the audio. We were in a busy hall, and while it does come through, there is a lot of background noise that we just couldn't get worked out. So listen in on the interview, and hopefully we will talk to you guys real soon.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to kick things off, this year at GenCon, you guys have a little bit of a smaller presence than you typically have had. There's not a lot of panels, there's not a lot of things like that going on. How is the con going for you this year, knowing that 5th edition has had quite a banner year this year so far? How is everything at the con, even though it's a little smaller experience for you guys?
Yeah, so the past year for D&D has been amazingly good. People have been loving 5th edition and loving playing 5th edition. So we decided for GenCon this year, our focus would be on play. And so that's why we have this huge play area, 200 DMs whom I met with last night. And we decided, rather than doing a sequence of panels like we normally do, that we would instead do the sessions that you just saw us doing, and that is basically Q&A sessions where people can just come up and chat with us right in the midst of the D&D play area. They can have us sign books, ask rules questions, and this is also the first Gen Con where we're doing that every day, well, at least Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So we decided to have sort of a much more of an on-the-ground presence rather than in a seminar room. We also find, because we do a lot of conventions, that Gen Con is very much about playing games. And that's not true just for D&D, that's true for many games. Whereas, say, like when we go to the PAXs, we usually do a number of panels. And in a few weeks, we'll be at PAX Prime in Seattle, where we will do a number of panels. But at PAX, where instead there's a lot of information about games, people are much more inclined to go to panels. So we'll sometimes have up to like 600 people at our D&D panels at PAX. So we've started to sort of tailor our focus at a convention to the focus of that particular convention. And at Gen Con, it's all about playing games.
I feel like that approach mirrors what you tried to do with the play testing, and you want to talk to the people.
Exactly.
So this is your chance to talk to the people and really kind of experience that. Because I watched you guys for a little bit. It wasn't just signing books, although there was a lot of that. It was the rules questions and the I love this and this is great and what about this, and have you thought about, like, there was more than just a couple of questions, there was interaction.
Exactly. And we find that there are a lot of fans who are comfortable going to a big panel and asking us questions in front of a bunch of other people, but there are many others who'd rather just come up to us face-to-face in a more intimate setting and just tell us what's going on with their D&D game, tell us what's working, what's not, sometimes telling us about their characters. It's a D&D tradition. And I love that kind of face-to-face interaction because, for both me and Mike and the rest of the D&D team, we started off as D&D fans like the people we're interacting with. I started playing D&D around when I was 5 years old with 1st edition. I met Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson, when I was a teenager. So this has been a part of my life pretty much the entire time. And so I like, again, to interact because, again, these are our people.
Are you finding that there's kind of a symmetries at work? Because originally, as I understand, Gen Con's origin started primarily with Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes.
And now, in a way, it's kind of going back all the way full circle, back to that, just the whole thing about getting together and playing games.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Gen Con originally was started by TSR. Now, of course, it's exploded to include games of all sorts. And yeah, it's very much about just sitting down together, rolling dice, telling stories together if you're playing an RPG.
Do you mind if we talk about organized play?
Go right ahead.
So I run encounters here in Indianapolis every Wednesday, a couple of hours. Elemental Evil was this last season. I didn't run the season before. Sasquatch helped you guys get that out.
Yes.
Are there going to be more partnerships like that, or are they going to be kept in-house? Are we going to see more bigger modules, smaller modules? What are we looking for here?
You're going to see a mix.
Okay.
Then our next big story, The Rage of Demons, we partnered with Green Running Publishing to create not only the Out of the Abyss adventure, but then the book that's following it called The Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, which we just recently announced. And both of those books we created in partnership with Green Running Publishing. But we also have other work we're doing ourselves, things we haven't announced yet. And really for us it's about, for each project, just what's best for the particular project, whether it's something we're going to primarily take on in-house or something where we're going to partner with people out of house. Really depends on the needs of that particular project, expertise of the people we want to be involved. So yeah, you're going to see a mix.
And you said there'll be more partnerships as well?
Nothing to announce at this point.
Nothing to announce at this point. But you're not opposed to it at this point?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, not on principle.
Changing gears, the Dungeons and Dragons movie was in litigation in Hollywood for a while. Do you have any updates on that? And let's say if the rights were acquired by Hasbro, how involved would Wizards of the Coast be in the creation of the script or in the creation of the movie overall?
So that I can't really talk about that. but I can say there should be an announcement very soon.
Oh, okay.
And
Great.
it'll be awesome. Right. The announcement will.
We can all help. We can all hope.
This is a question I feel like you probably get asked all the time, and I hate to be the guy who asks the question like this, but along the lines of digital tools, we know that there was a plan and things sort of fell through with that, but looking forward to the future, do you guys still have something in the works as far as digital tools? I know you probably can't give us details or anything like that, but can you confirm that there is a plan?
Well, we always have our eye out for promising possibilities. There is Fantasy Grounds now, which provides a way to play the game online. And so we have our eye out for other partnerships like that. But otherwise, yeah, nothing to announce at this point.
Okay, cool.
I have noticed that your announcements and your product line is usually just the next thing. Is that going to continue? Like Sword Coast is going to be the next thing, and there hasn't been a lot of talk beyond that. Is that your way of not getting too far ahead and then having to make changes, or is that just we want to focus on this and that's where our focus is?
Yeah, it's really about focus because 5th edition in its bones is about storytelling. I mean, first and foremost, it is about the stories that our DMs and players weave themselves at the table. But it's also about the stories we provide through our adventures for the tabletop role-playing game. And we realized that we do really want people to stay focused on sort of what is the next thing. And a big part of that is we want to create a common experience among D&D players where basically everyone knows what's coming next for Dungeons & Dragons, as opposed to what are the next 12 things coming for Dungeons & Dragons, and then suddenly everything starts bleeding together. And this way, there can be this sort of common experience as the edition unfolds. And I have to admit that part of this is because Mike Merles and I both, we're both old-timers when it comes to D&D, and we both really liked that in the game's early days there was that common experience because there wasn't a flood of product, and so when a D&D product did come out, it was a big deal. Back then, especially early on, it was like a big deal that in 1 year, one hardback book came out. And so, now we do several a year. But again, it's sort of about us all as D&D fans moving together through what's coming up.
So
So you're really kind of more focusing almost in a way similar to a film setup, where you've got, okay, this film, like look at the new Star Wars, for example, 7, 8, 9, they're looking towards that. They're doing some spin-offs, but that's, we want to have this next component, and we're going to get into that, and you're going to see this, that. But we're not telling you about the third thing. We're telling you about the next one. So you're seeing what's here, and then what you can get look forward to.
Exactly. And because, I mean, we're working on things that extend into 2017, 2018. I mean, our planning is extensive. And so there is definitely a lot more coming. But in a way, it would just do no good to talk about it now. We also really value the ability to be nimble. One of the big lessons we learned from the playtest process is the tremendous value of engaging with our fellow fans and really taking our time to analyze their feedback and letting that feedback have a significant impact on the shape of the game. And if we get sort of too ahead of ourselves, commit way in advance to, 5 books from now, this thing is coming out in this particular month, it really ties our hands. And again, we basically don't want to commit until we have to, for the good of the game, because we are constantly gathering data. Not only do we do questionnaires, but we're also always keeping an eye on Twitter. We read forums. We look on Facebook. People send us in emails. Every day I'm getting emails at the Sage Advice address, and so we're always tracking sort of what's working, what's not, where's the wind blowing, and by sort of keeping focused, not only do we create that common experience, but we can be nimble. It means we can quickly adjust if we need to. We could decide, well, that product that we were planning to be number 5 from now, we're going to make number 3. We can basically shuffle things around in a way that we feel is going to respond best to what our players want.
It also gives you guys in-house a chance to not have to worry about it. There's less pressure if they don't know what the 5th book is coming out.
Right.
And you know that you're going to put out the Tiefling Compendium eventually, but it starts to take off, and that's what the players want. You can adjust it.
Yeah. Again, it's that nimbleness is crucial.
Is there any plan and I may just not be aware of, is there a podcast that you guys are doing over in the D&D section? Something kind of along the lines of what Morrow does with Drive to Work with Magic?
So we do have a sequence of D&D podcasts. Okay. We used to, for a number of years, have a monthly one that Mike Merles and I did together. I then basically faded away because I was tasked with overseeing the creation of the core books for 5th edition.
Sure.
And so basically I was the guy in the corner sort of tinkering away on the books. But we'll probably over time get a bit more back to that kind of regular podcast tempo. But we do still have them, and it's just sort of a mix of people talking. Sometimes it's Mike, sometimes it's other members of the team.
Gotcha.
I think right now it's Mark Carroll and Shelley Mazzanoble who's doing the D&D podcast on a semi-regular basis. It's not a set release schedule by any means. We do miss you, Mike. Podcast.
Thank you.
We're huge fans of podcasts at the Nerds Domain, period. That's a big part of why we got into this. But there's definitely a different tone, and it's good, but it's not the same. And we do miss you guys. So with that, it seems like your releases are also falling on the encounters and the expeditions and the organized play. Is that going to continue for the foreseeable future? And I know you can't release too much, but are we going to see something other than just Fenrir? Are we going to see Eberron come back? Greyhawk? Anything like that? Or is that going to stay in the Dragon? It's not even a magazine now, it's Dragon Plus, right?
So really, I mean, it's sort of two questions there.
Sure.
The tempo of releases, it is often synced up with encounter seasons, but really only when a product is specifically meant for encounters play. Our releases are often also, and so it's sort of a juggling act, also often synced up with D&D video games. Like we'll try to time something so that if let's say the Neverwinter MMO is going to feature a piece of the Rage of Demons story, well, then we want to make sure that the tabletop role-playing games, Rage of Demons products come out around the same time. And pretty soon there will be Sword Coast Legends, which will also start linking up with some of the stories that we're also telling in the tabletop role-playing game. So it's sort of this spider web of things. And this again goes back to why it's so important for us to be nimble, because we're not just juggling now the tabletop role-playing game, we're juggling its connection to these other expressions of D&D. As for other worlds, again, you guys will probably always get sick of hearing this, nothing to announce right now, but you've seen we've already touched on some other worlds in Unearthed Arcana. And what I also often like to point out to people is our other settings are all over the place in the core books. And so really, to see our intention for 5th edition, just take a look at the core books. If you look at the very first page of the introduction in the Player's Handbook, there's a word there that appears in bold. It's multiverse. And often when I get asked, what is the official setting of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, my answer is, it's the multiverse. Now, the Forgotten Realms is the world in the multiverse that does indeed get a lot of focus. It is our most richly detailed setting. It's our most popular setting. So we have tons of stories that we can tell in FR. But those other settings are a part of the multiverse. And they, as you'll see, get a lot of attention in the core books.
So Dragon Plus is going to be, and Unearthed Arcana are going to be a vehicle to release things a little bit at a time to augment those things and to express that.
Well, and Unearthed Arcana is really a playtest vehicle. I don't know if you noticed that when we recently announced the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, that in the announcement we referred to the Swashbuckler. Well, the Swashbuckler is a rogue subclass that we initially introduced in Unearthed Arcana. So I think what some people aren't quite getting is Unearthed Arcana is we're actually showing you pieces of products in the future. Well, I should say potential pieces. Because, and I say that because we are so committed to playtesting after the huge success of the playtest for the core books, that even if we love something and put it out there, if it goes over like a lead balloon, we won't take it any further. But if we see a lot of positive response, as we have with things like the Swashbuckler, the Storm Sorcerer, we look at those and then we think, where could this take root in the future, outside of the sort of unofficial Unearthed Arcana context?
Sword Coast Legends, you mentioned it comes out very soon. There's a lot of expectations, a lot of hope behind it. It's the first real Dungeons & Dragons classic RPG in a while. Is this a make or break kind of a game? Or is there going to be a continuation of RPGs? Are you hoping for this to be kind of a franchise with DLC and just focusing on that for the future?
I mean, we of course hope that people are going to love it and that it's a big success, but we actually envision a constellation of D&D video games. And you already see this with Sword Coast Legends coming, but we also have the Neverwinter MMO. So, I mean, I would love for any one of them to be, a massive hit. But I think there are, again, many stories that can be told in video games having to do with D&D. Regarding Sword Coast Legends, I mean, one of the things I'm excited about it, aside from it being really kind of, classic Baldur's Gate style in terms of the isometric view and all of that, I love that. But the DM mode is awesome. N-Space came into Wizards of the Coast a number of months ago, and we all got to play it, and a number of members of our team continue to play it every week as we then give feedback to their team. And I think people are going to really love that DM mode, because there really hasn't been anything quite like it, where you get to stalk the dungeon.
There's a bit of that DDO.
Yeah.
But this is going to be much more robust, I assume.
Well, and it's also a different style of game.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, because again, it's the classic isometric view. And almost one of the fun things about that view is there's almost a tabletop quality to it. It's like dropping minis down almost on a grid. And so I mean, even people in-house have just had a great time playing the game. There've been a lot of TPKs. Yeah.
So along the lines of when you were talking about settings and the multiverse being a big part of D&D, one of the things that's great about 5th edition is it's so easy to convert material. So if you have 1st edition adventures, it's really easy to plug in and play with the 5th edition rules. Knowing that there's already a lot of stuff out there and that you have D&D classics, and are you open to the possibility of an original setting coming out with the 5th edition rule set, something we've never seen before? I know that it's been all about the iconic, in the player's handbook, all the spells and classes and races are very iconic, which is great to see. But do you think that perhaps at some point down the line we might see something? Are you guys open to as a possibility?
We're certainly open to it. Because Mike Merles, Chris Perkins, and I, all three of us are DMs at heart. I have a homebrew setting I've been using since 1st edition.
Yeah, you should roll it out. I think it should be that.
And so we ourselves love building worlds, telling stories, but our priority right now is serving our classic settings and exploring the types of stories we can tell in those settings. Because even though there have been decades of stories told in the Forgotten Realms, there's still so many more stories we can tell there. Particularly in that setting, because it is so gigantic. People often forget that you could fit several North Americas just in the part of the Forgotten Realms that is usually focused on. And it's such a vast area with so many different threats and cultures.
So what I keep hearing is multiverse, so what I'm going to take away from that, and we totally said this, just trust me, is that we're going to see Spelljammer coming.
I cannot guarantee it. But I will say there are a number of us who have on the team who have a lot of fondness for Spelljammer. We know Spelljammer has long been the butt of many jokes, but it came out when I was a kid, and I still love the ships that were introduced in that.
Yeah.
And there is an element of Spelljammer in my homebrew setting. Not so much the interplanetary travel, but a lot of the spaceships that appear in Spelljammer I use as airships in my homebrew settings.
With the whole multiverse element here, just out of curiosity, because Wizards has a number of universes related to different games, is there a concept or a plan in place to make a unified universe in which all of the multiverses are still represented, but even things like Magic would have their storylines and their story arcs in this world, so that you could bring people over and back and forth and things of that nature?
It's over the years. There's often been talk about basically could some of the worlds in Magic be a part of the D&D multiverse?
Right.
But again, we keep coming back to focusing on the worlds we already have,
Sure.
Because the D&D multiverse is already so vast.
Right. You need to add more to it.
Right.
More the question with just how much so many studios have gone to the focus of that unified world where you can have things cross over, and I was just curious about that.
And it's the crossover is something we are really enjoying playing with in our storytelling. You've already seen some of it in the stories we've told. We very intentionally, for instance, in the Tyranny of Dragons, had Tiamat basically crash into, or try to crash into, the Forgotten Realms. And partly of our storytelling is that basically she failed with Kryn, so she's trying now someplace else. And it's interesting, some fans thought, wait, is this sort of basically a Dragonlance story being taken and given to the Forgotten Realms? And our perspective is no, this is a D&D multiverse story, and we have this awesome rogues gallery of cosmic villains. We have, the Princes of Elemental Evil, we have Tiamat, we have the Lords of the Nine Hells. These are villains who exist in some form or another in the entire multiverse. And so what we're really exploring is, if, say, the Princes of Elemental Evil bombed out in the world of Greyhawk, it makes sense they're going to try someplace else. Because just as the heroes in D&D can travel, from world to world and from plane to plane, well, so can their foes.
I think there was some elements of that in some of the novels. From 4th edition, you have it's not the Chaos Plague.
The Abyssal Plague.
The Abyssal Plague, that was essentially another Temple of Elemental Evil arm.
Right.
In a way. So you're just extending that and doing it again because it makes sense.
And we see that now in our upcoming story, Rage of Demons, where again, the demon lords, they don't threaten just one world in the multiverse, they threaten them all. And this time they are unleashed in the Underdark of the Forgotten Realms.
So, with this idea then that, you guys are kind of always threading the needle for what's next and what's coming next, where are the best places for people to look for those hints maybe about what's coming up? If they play Rage of Demons, might there be a hint or two there about what's going to come after? Is it reading comic books? Is it playing the Neverwinter MMO? Is it, just checking the D&D website over and over again? Like, what's the best way for people who can't get enough to get some hints?
So to get the really sort of obscure hints, I would read the adventures very carefully. Because we even have some famous characters from other settings showing up and some things coming up, but their names might not be used. But it's just keep in mind that it is part of D&D lore that characters like Elminster, Mordenkainen from Greyhawk, and Dalamar from Dragonlance, they know each other. These powerful wizards, through planar travel, have met each other. And again, it's something that we're bringing more to the fore than we have in the last decade or so, where often the focus was much more on the individual worlds, and now we're sort of panning back and looking at them as one giant setting where they are connected through the planes. You can reach all of them through Sigil, the City of Doors, which we talk about in the Dungeon Master's Guide.
So, are there any other places to utilize that some players may not, like Dragon Plus? You also mentioned the Art of Arcana, which is through the website.
Yes.
Is there anything else that players or DMs should be utilizing, looking at, touching, to make sure that they're getting the fullest of their experience?
I think Dragon Plus is a great way to get a lot of this material collated. The D&D website is a great place. Mike and I announce things also, as well as Chris Perkins, in our Twitter feeds. And those are the best. Also, the stories, of course, also show up in other forms in Neverwinter, upcoming in Sword Coast Legends. And so all of it together, it's this vast tapestry. And particularly with the storytelling, Chris Perkins is sort of our mastermind. And yeah, he has needles he's threading that sort of go several years into the future. And it's quite fun, actually, to see where little seeds planted, as early as Tyranny of Dragons might not, fully take fruit until like a year or two from now.
I'm really curious to find out why Pendleton Ward, who's the creator of Adventure Time, was visiting your offices. So I am hopeful that we find out sooner rather than later about that.
Tell the truth, you guys are creating a studio just to make films. It's going to be on all the ones owned by Wizards of the Coast. That's the truth, isn't it?
Yeah, we're not announcing yet what that was about.
Yeah. So along the lines of people making stuff for D&D, I'm sure that you are not blind to all of the materials coming out that are compatible with the 5th edition of the world's most famous role-playing game, Kickstarters and stuff like that.
Right.
And you guys have been talking about an OGL and giving people time to get familiar with the rule set and everything before you release what you have. And obviously, everyone's speculating everything from, like you said, you're reading the internet every day, so I don't need to tell you it's everything from they'll never let us have it to, we're going to be able to write about anything we want. And so I guess my question is, do you guys feel ready to release your own plans sometime in the future, maybe now that people have had a chance to get familiar with the 5th edition rules?
Yeah, I think that familiarity phase has definitely occurred. And at this point, we're waiting for the company to be ready to take the next step. So again, nothing to announce at this point. I think there's a lot of value in having something like the OGL. Mike Merles and I, as designers, before coming to Wizards of the Coast, both worked on OGL products. So it, just fingers crossed, and we'll see what happens.
So a question about you as a designer, as something for you personally. If there was another product, another story out there that you could work on, you could touch base on, you could influence, what would that be?
A D&D story?
No, anything. Star Wars.
Anything.
Cthulhu, anything.
Wow.
Something that just, every once in a while late at night, you're like, I could do this here.
So, it's a funny answer, but I actually have a series of children's books that I have thought about writing for many years. But the other thing that always gets my creative juices flowing is my home campaign. Because I have been building this world for so many decades now that I feel like I know some of the NPCs in it almost like real people. Don't worry, I'm not mentally ill. and so there are a lot of stories I could tell in that setting. And I sometimes get asked would I ever want to publish my setting, which is now so richly detailed. There's a part of me that never wants to, because I feel like as soon as I did, it would no longer be mine. And I know that other world creators have had this experience, that as soon as it becomes out there, it belongs to everybody. And there's this sense I have that because it's mine, I can do anything I want with it. And it's sort of, my baby. But it is something that I occasionally use at conventions. If ever I run an adventure at a convention that I've written myself, it's almost always set in my setting. Which is just probably, this is my version of telling you about my character. My setting, I created it as a kid to be the world that Barovia originally came from.
Nice. Okay.
So my entire setting is basically, I took the seed of the little valley of Barovia in the original Ravenloft and created an entire world around that valley.
So you follow your own advice in the DMG. You start with a small area.
Exactly. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I did make sure that the advice we give in the DMG is actually advice we take ourselves.
So is it like a darker Gothic world like that, or does there's this area of it that's like that, and there's sort of diversity throughout?
There's a tremendous amount of diversity. Partly because I like to be able to tell many different types of stories.
Yeah.
Definitely a strong Gothic streak, but there's also an epic heroic streak.
So where can we play that?
If I run a game for you and I've written the adventure, you are likely to be in that world. There's a group of guys I know in Iowa who've now flown me out twice to DM for them. This past year, it was over the Memorial Day weekend. I DM'd for them for about 18 hours, and the entire thing was set in my home setting. So they sort of drank from the fire hose. Yeah.
It's like paid speaking, but they'll fly you out and DM for them.
No,
and I'll bring my thing.
It's a great time.
It's awesome.
And I bring this up because to really show that all that we say about 5th edition really belonging to the Dungeon Master, about how much of the Dungeon Master's Guide is about creating your own material, that stuff is near and dear to our hearts because it's basically we take our own medicine. I have my home D&D game every month, And I'm making stuff up for my home campaign all the time, just like so many of the DMs for D&D.
So a few weeks ago, a picture supposedly went around that was Vin Diesel's birthday cake, and it was a player's handbook and a monster manual and a DMG. He's always talking about what an influence Dungeons and Dragons is on his material. Surely you've reached out to him, and surely he's responded, right?
For your new studio. Surely.
You know, I am sure somebody within Wizards or Hasbro has talked to him. I haven't personally.
I feel like he wrote years ago for the 30th anniversary.
There was that art
wrote
book.
a foreword to the art book.
Yes, he did.
So, let's talk about Vin Diesel then. So you want to sit down at a table of 6 players and they're celebrities. Who are the 6 players you put at the table?
I would have to say Vin Diesel, otherwise
It invalidates my question.
he'll come after me. Let's see. I'd want Ian McKellen at the table. I have no idea if he'd have any interest in playing D&D, but just so that I could listen to his voice.
Okay. Yeah.
But I would almost want him to be like, maybe I'd write him a script and ask him to be the DM, so I could listen to him the entire time.
You could do the soundtrack with this heavy metal too.
That's right. If Sir Christopher Lee were still alive, I would also want him at the table. Let's see. Who else? I would want Cate Blanchett. Basically, I'm going through the whole cast of The Lord of the Rings. Okay. Because Cate Blanchett's another one where I could listen to her talk for hours. Let's see. Who else? Helen Mirren. So really, Vin Diesel would be the young pup, and Cate Blanchett.
Sounds like it would be a lot of NPC interaction, a lot of dialogue-heavy encounters.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
So is that going to be PAX Prime 2018? You're on the stage with them?
Yes.
That
And
sounds
we will channel Sir Christopher Lee somehow.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
So most unexpected person that you found out plays D&D like heavily.
Let's see. I was delighted when I found out how much Stephen Colbert likes it. And he would be another one who would be delightful to play with.
Oh yeah.
Although I know Lord of the Rings is especially near and dear to his heart.
So do you feel good about what's coming up the next year? Like next year at GenCon, if we're sitting around this table having this conversation again, I'm hopeful that the health of D&D and everything will be just as strong as it ever is, and we'll have a lot of cool new stuff to talk about. It feels like that's what you're saying will happen.
So no, this is no marketing spin. I'm putting the finishing touches right now on the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, and I cannot wait to work on the book that comes after that. It's actually been sort of the one I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like the little boy.
So when
gimme.
When you work with a studio like Green Ronin or Cobalt Press or Sasquatch, what is your relationship like? Because I think a lot of people see it as outsourcing, which when you talk to the people at those companies, it doesn't sound like that at all. It sounds like it is a big-time collaborative. You guys are leading the charge with them, making these things. You give them the stories. So what is that relationship like? How does that working relationship work?
It's definitely a partnership. And unlike a licensed product, which would be published by somebody else, these are products that we publish ourselves at Wizards of the Coast. And really, the broader context is, for many years, we have worked with freelancers. And what we've experimented with 5th edition is, rather than hiring the freelancers as individuals, instead we've gone to another studio and essentially had them round up the freelancers. And so it's like we're dealing with them almost as a collective. And as you say, we craft the stories because the stories are not only for the tabletop role-playing game, but also tie in to video games, board games like the Temple of Elemental Evil board game. And so we make sure that the through line for all of those products is stable. And then as the studio does their work, we work with them on a weekly basis, reviewing the writing they're doing. We also do writing ourselves. Then when it comes time to take a look at any new monster stat blocks, magic items, spells, what have you, often bits of those will be written by the studio, some of it written by us. Then we take all of it, we send it out to playtesting, and then we take care of the development of that material once we get the playtest feedback back. Then once we have the whole manuscript back, we put all the finishing touches on, weave it all together, often put art in. I mean, we're also a part of the art process, deciding what goes into the books. In many ways, all the things we would do in any project where we work with freelancers. It's just, again, it's been this shift where instead we're working with the freelancers as a group. And we work, again, closely with them from beginning to end.
That's awesome. I had a question that has escaped my mind. It's been a long weekend already. That's a terrible
And this whole
sign.
day.
So, there it is. I got it. So with the success of Lords of Waterdeep and the expansion, is there a hope? I know you can't announce anything, but next year I'm going to sit down at this table and I'm going to have you announce everything for the previous year, so you can announce a bunch if you want. But is there a hope that you will have another success like that? Is that something that the company would like to work towards, or secretly already is working towards, and we just haven't heard about it yet?
Well, I mean, you saw we partnered with WizKids for the Temple of Elemental Evil board game. So board games continue to be an interest of ours. They're not our focus, but if a good board game idea comes along and it fits into one of our stories, we would definitely be keen in pursuing it. But again, it's a
secondary thought.
Yeah, and we see what will fit, what's not going to take our focus away from the other things that we're working on. But a number of us are big board game fans. So yeah, I mean, if another Lords of Waterdeep comes along, that would be delightful.
So do you see yourself, this is my last question, do you guys see yourself as like a Marvel or DC, where you started with this thing, you started with the tabletop, or in their case, comic books, and now it's led to all these possibilities, board games, video games, possibly a movie, that kind of thing. And is that one reason it's good to keep the tabletop role-playing game around and strong, is because that's the core base of this franchise now that you...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we view D&D as, like Marvel Comics, as being a multiverse of worlds that can spawn stories in many different forms, whether film, comic books, video games, the tabletop role-playing game. And the tabletop role-playing game, in many ways, is the heart and soul of it. So even though some of those other storytelling vehicles might end up being, the blockbuster one. I mean, a video game, for instance, could be just a runaway hit and sell millions. The TRPG will always be sort of that soul, because it's an inspiration to not only just hundreds of thousands of people all over the world, but specifically actually to storytellers working in those other media. I mean, it's amazing the number of writers and game designers in other media who started out playing D&D when they were kids or in college, and really cut their teeth in some ways as storytellers on the tabletop role-playing. So yeah, we love, the TRPG, and our goal is to keep it healthy, to keep the players of it happy, and that's why we've sort of been curating it. There's a measured tempo to what we've been doing with it, and that's because our goal is to keep it as strong as possible.
It feels like quality over quantity.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that has been our mantra even since before 5th edition came out. and it was something we would say before the new edition was released, trying to get everyone prepped for the different tempo that this edition would have. But for us, it was always going to be about quality over quantity, and it's been amazing how successful that's been so far.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes.
Oh, my pleasure.
No idea if you have anything else. Other than a very silly question.
Okay.
Go right ahead, sir.
Silly
I like
questions
to,
are
I like
fine.
to finish out most of my interviews with, so where are we going to see you next? So Dungeons & Dragons, you said PAX Prime, that's the next one.
Yes.
Where else can my listeners come out, experience Dungeons & Dragons with the creators, with the team, with whoever it is, and where can they see you at conventions? I know there's D&D or D&D encounters every Wednesday night in
Yes.
your local store, and you can find that all on Wizards and Shows. Sorry, I'm doing your job for you. And then expeditions and also run that way as well. You can
Yes.
also find those in your local store.
Yep.
But where can we play the epics? Where can we experience a chance to talk to you and learn more about this?
Well, so the next epic is right here at GenCon, and as you said, people can see us at PAX Prime, which is just weeks away. There will be, as usual, the Acquisitions Inc. game run by Chris Perkins. It will be awesome as always. We have a number of panels we're doing. We'll also be wandering around at PAX, so people, if they just run into us, we're always happy to talk about D&D. People can also reach us on Twitter. With me, Jeremy E. Crawford, and I believe Mike's is just Mike Merles. And can shoot us questions, comments, 24/7 basically. And beyond PAX Prime, there's a good chance some of us will be at PAX East, and then occasionally we show up at smaller shows. I also, to anyone in Seattle, occasionally will wander in incognito to game stores, especially on Capitol Hill in Seattle, when they're running encounters, and I just like to see how it's going because I love seeing people having a good time with D&D.
Sit down, pretend you don't know how to play, and make them.
No, I would never do that to a GM. But it's funny if people knew, if they recognize me, they're always welcome if people are listening to this to stop me and say, hey Jeremy, let's talk about D&D.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
my
so
pleasure.
much. We really appreciate it.
Alright guys, that'll do us tonight for the Nerds Domain podcast. You can always find us over at Facebook and Twitter. You can email us at nerdsdomain@gmail.com. You can head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating and let us know what you think there. And you can find our shirts over at /loot, and we will talk to you guys real soon.